Western civilization is moving closer to a point of irreconcilable, unstable equilibrium, as frighteningly increasing numbers of people trust nothing. Media, academia, and especially the governments are no longer held in high esteem. Regaining trust is often impossible after betrayal. However, transparency is essential to any healing process, and that is the essence of the Don Sullivan Show. Please listen to the team explore, probe, and debate cutting-edge science, technology, and computing. Play ball!
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Don Sullivan Show. And guess what? Today, I'm not climbing any mountains. I'm not going down any canyons. We're back to our core competency, in which we have some of the best guests in the world to talk about some of the most important subjects in the world under the auspices of science, technology, and computing. That which can be discussed on a high school level because, everybody in America is a high school student at some point, and you all need to understand all of that. So first, again, our lawyers are insistent. In fact, when I was up Kilimanjaro a few weeks ago, I was with one of our lawyers who, again, insisted that we have to keep reading out the disclaimer. I think it's kind of silly, but here we go. All the statements and the hosts and all the statements by the host and the guest on the Don Sullivan Show are the personal opinions of the host and the guest, who all agree that the following content is the property of Analytics LLC, to be used publicly and exclusively on the Don Sullivan Show alone. And I know you all purposefully can't see us, but everybody's shaking their heads, and we're good with that. So we're moving forward. Thank you all for listening. And I want to first introduce a very, very special guest from Flexera. Sometimes we don't mention the company. Sometimes we do. This is very important that we do because we want to give Flexera as much credit as possible. We've had other guests from Flexera as well. But I think that we are going to have a number of different parts to this discussion. At least this one today is probably going to be in two parts, depending on how long we go. But I want to introduce you to Mark Bradley, who is a senior manager of product management at Flexera, one of the world's leading IT management and optimization platforms. A very cool place overall. He works as Flexera's subject matter expert on IT sustainability. So this is an interesting subject for us because one of the things that I have believed for a long time is that there is a certain irreconcilability that exists in the United States. And it's around tribalism, it's around politics, which we do not talk about here on the Don Sullivan Show. We really stay away from it. But sometimes the concept of sustainability gets caught up in that because people have preconceived notions about what that means. Oh, you're a greenie lunatic this way, or you're a conservative that doesn't care about the world. You just want to see it all burn down and everybody starve to death and die of drought and all of that stuff. So the bottom line is the overall subject is extremely involved. It's very, very nuanced. There is very little real consensus around the world about anything. But one thing I will tell you is that sustainability, working at the intersection, Mark, is of IT asset management and financial operations, overall cloud financial operations, and generally environmental sustainability. One of the things that's really important here, and we're going to talk about this through the entire show, is that I've learned from Mark that truly we can make sustainability profitable. And I think everybody on this show and everybody in the world can get behind that. If we can save anything, that's probably a net positive. But if we can actually make it profitable, that's seriously positive to even the most conservative people on earth. The Steve Mnuchins of the world are going to get behind actually being profitable if they hear it's profitable and it's sustainable, even if they do hear the word green. So we're going to have a lot of fun with all this. Mark has got some interesting certifications here. FinOps certified practitioner, holds green software for practitioners and Cloud Green Ops Philosopher Certification. I got to ask what all of that means. That is one heck of a certification. I got to see if you've actually got certificates on that. And has spoken, of course, as we all do, but Mark with different types of events. Spoken at industry events, including Green I/O in London. That's one I want to hear about. In 2025, Flexera received the Green Pixie Partner of the Year award under his leadership. The core philosophy: treat carbon like cash. That's one we're going to get into discussing. I might have a couple of quips on that we might butt heads about a little bit. But not this. Measure it, manage it, and make smarter decisions because of it. And all of this is going to be incredibly overall interesting. So, Mark, now that I have blathered along about you a lot, you want to say hello to the audience and talk about all this a little bit?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Don. Thank you, Steve, for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Had a chance to catch a few episodes, even a couple with my fellow Flexerans who are on. So that was great. And then, of course, the VMware connection. I think it's like the Kevin Bacon. You're only two people away from anyone who's ever worked at VMware. So mine would be Shiny and Roy Rittenholler. Both worked for.
One of the things I used to say about VMware is it was the most sustainable, or it saved more power than all of Al Gore's fantasies combined. And
I got his book right there.
We never really even leveraged that we should have had lobbyists on K Street to lobby for tax credits for virtualization, not even just VMware virtualization, of course it would have been, but just because it worked so well and it innately saved, as we're talking about here, so much. And I think we missed that opportunity tremendously. Now, I'm not allowed to be disparaging about VMware, but I always said that from literally 2010 when I got there to VMware. But go ahead, Mark. I'm interrupting.
No. Just to piggyback on that, I was working for a different company, and we were doing data center consolidation. And it was, how many servers can we cram into VMware? And then each time we recycled the server, and then we would just take that hardware and put it into the configuration. And then before you know it, every application was on a virtual machine. And then we were able to manage the growth of the company without having to, tear down the walls and expand the data center.
The amount of power saved and the amount of licensing saved was just utterly profound. And again, I don't think we ever really utilized or leveraged that aspect of the wonder of VMware. You might know, I wrote a book in 2014 on Oracle running on VMware, and I made the comment early that the vSphere, VMware's flagship product, and the Oracle RDBMS were the two most important software products ever written. Unfortunately, VMware has gone in a totally different direction. Very profitable, but this aspect of it is not as important as it was before. But go ahead before I get myself in trouble.
No. And just wanted to share that connection. I was always a big fan of VMware, and I've been able to, it's helped my career along the way. So it's been great. So thanks for having me. As you mentioned, I've been getting into IT sustainability. I'm not your typical who kind of grew up as a tree hugger and seeing my way through that way. It happened, we each have a path how we get there. And mine came from three different avenues. The first one was my daughter went to University of Iowa and chose to be an environmental engineer. Mm-hmm. And she bought a bunch of the books. They were very expensive. And I said, when you come home, bring those books. I want to look through them. Because if I'm paying that kind of money for books, I want to read them. Yeah. So that was the first one. The second one was, like you, I had the opportunity to contribute to a book, the ITIL 4, Digital and IT Strategy. It was our COVID project. And while that was happening, they did an ITIL for Sustainability book. And a few of the authors on our book went over to that one. And then I got to read before they published it. So I got to be one of the early previewers of it. And so between the two, I said, if this is half true or a quarter true, holy cow, are we in trouble? And then the third one was through our customer advisory board. So we would do sessions and then talk to our customers. And then in one of the sessions came up that said Flexera was uniquely positioned to help companies with IT sustainability. And about that time, our data centers hadn't quite eclipsed the airline industry yet. It has since then. It's surpassed it. I'm
looking
waiting
at
for
multiple orders of magnitude here pretty soon, I think.
Big time.
Yes. And I can already see when we get our cloud bill in the future, it's going to have cost and carbon right next to it. Today, it doesn't, but it should. Coming soon, I believe. But nonetheless, through that, so then I had a chance to, I was working on a product called IT Visibility. Scans your environment, pulls all the data together. Flexera has this product called Technopedia, which has been gathering data for last 15 years so that when that scan data comes in, it's not perfectly clean data. But what we do is we dot the I's, cross the T's, put the vendor's official nameplate, if you will, and then we pass it through as beautiful, clean data. And then once it's beautifully done, then we enrich it. And carbon is one of the key areas. Life cycle is a key area. Vulnerability, open source, all the different things that really enrich. And when we added sustainability, that really brought some enlightenment. And when you talk about, desktops, laptops, routers, switches, hubs, it starts with the manufacturer, what they call scope 3. It's that manufacturer. What did it take to produce that device? And then they give you a number. And then through the labs, they're able to tell you how much power that device is going to use over the next 3 to 5 years. And they can tell in the aggregate because they keep rinse, lather, repeat. This lab has a process. And so through that, we were able to publish those numbers. And that was a kind of insight that customers didn't have before. And you had mentioned you were in Africa. It's interesting. Sustainability is important, but what's more important to them was how much power it would consume so that they can tell the electric company to make sure we have this much power available to our data center. And it's based on these devices running at these timeframes. And that if you can make sure that we have that much power, then we don't have to shut everything off every time the power goes out.
Sort of like an Energy Star guide, a little bit like that, Mark?
Yeah, it's the Energy Star. There's one called EPEAT. There's a number of them that your device, it used to, I think we can all relate. We used to get a machine that had a ton of stickers all over it. What were these stickers? It was all the labs that it had gone through. Now they give it to you on a piece of paper. And then you can see it's like
out.
NASCAR.
Yeah. And I'll tell you about in Africa, Nigeria, I think it's got a lot to do with who's ever controlling anything in Lagos at any particular moment or not. But you see momentary power outages, 10 minutes, 5 times a day. In Tanzania, it was more like twice a day, and it was only about 30 seconds. But nobody could really explain why. They're just so used to it. But I think partly what you're saying is true. It's a little bit more than the California blackouts that we kind of become used to.
Yeah. Yes. It seems like there's, when I think of sustainability in relation to IT and technology, my mind always goes immediately, usually towards efficiency. But what you're talking about is also predictability, which makes sense. But how do we get more out of these current systems, basically?
Yes. No, that's a great point. And there's a PDF file that's defined for every machine. There's really 2. There's the marketing one. Why buy this device? And it's beautiful. It's got it's got AI. It's got this. It's got that. And then the one that's more technical, which is the hardware specs. And then the specs this is the power supply. This is the memory chips. This is, the motherboard and all the key components that are there. And it's that one that we're able to see quickly. Okay, this device was life cycled for 3 years, 4 years, or 5. Typically 5 is less and less because the technology turnover is pretty quick. But then as companies are aware of that and that life cycle, then they can make choices like, let's donate it. Let's take it out. We either A, we're recycling our machines and we donate it, or B, we sweat the server. We put it on and we go the 5, 6, 7 years beyond because we can shift loads off of it that aren't as important or as intense, but yet we can still maintain it. So those are some of the strategies there. And then once we launched that went pretty well. And then we, of course, customers always wanting more. What about the cloud? How are you going to help me with Amazon, Azure, GCP? They'll give us the carbon data from the prior quarter. And it's based on whatever percentage of infrastructure is in that data center that belongs to us. So if you have 30%, when they calculate their carbon, 30% is for you. And you're like, well, how'd you get that? What do I do? How do I manage that? And we saw an opportunity that said, hey, you're giving me a cloud bill on time, every time as it's happening. No one can bill me better than the cloud providers can. What if I looked at that? And as you know, it's millions of rows, hundreds of columns, and you can scroll to the right and right. And what we found was the data center location told us the grid, the CPU told us the power, and then there was some other intangibles that we could calculate quickly, and we can tell you how much carbon based on that device. And it's the manufacturer specs coupled with utilization. So utilization, the specs, power supply, we're able to calculate it. We partnered, you saw the Green Pixie. So we partner with Green Pixie to give us that calculation. It's ISO certified. They went through, got audited. They know that multiple companies like Flexera are going to use this data. So they own the math, but we have to understand it to be able to talk to our customers. So by doing that, that allowed us to get to market faster, address, if you look at each cloud provider, there's thousands of SKUs, and every day they just keep adding more and more SKUs, and they're not retiring any of the SKUs. It just grows and grows and grows. And working with Green Pixie, we can do a calculation on just about every single SKU. So when the cloud bill comes, whether it's a service, a device, a process, a workflow, all those things that they sell you, we've got a number next to it. And it's not just carbon. It's carbon, water, electricity, and they give us the cost.
So what's the difference in that sense between carbon and electricity? I would think there's a one-to-one relationship.
Yeah, so it's a very good question. So the carbon is based on the output of what happens when you use that device. The electricity is what was it spec'd for when they put the device together? What was the power supply? Was it 250 watts? Was it 500 watts? So that's given us the power supply. And knowing that, plus there's another term I think that you had seen in one of your prior discussions, power user efficiency. So when you get to the data center, you get to the servers, what does that power user efficiency look like? And those are different throttle points that go into the calculation, which helps calculate that carbon.
Okay.
Yeah, great points.
So let's step back a minute because I really do want to know about these certifications. Like I said, that's one I've been around this industry a long time and I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah. So our friends at Green Pixie, what we found as we've been getting into this is that, like you had said in the opening of the show, we all indirectly want to do the right thing if we know what the right thing is, and sustainability
if it's profitable.
And if it's profitable. And so our friends at Green Pixie did 2 different certification courses, and they're not to give you a PhD or anything like that. All they are is to help you understand the lay of the land. And when we talk about things like scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, we talk about data centers, we talk about SKUs, we're all on the same page so that when we have a conversation, that's table stakes. And so they put those 2 courses together. And I proudly put them on here, not because they're hard or difficult. It's because I want people to know that these are available and most time free. Reach out to us. We get a little code from Green Pixie that we can share with our customers, and they can take the course. It's about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how much time they have. And then when you're done, you take a test, pass, and then on LinkedIn you get that little badge that says, you're green certified, philosophy. So all good stuff. And in Flexera, we have over 400 people that have taken time out of their day to take these tests, to do these certifications. And I'm
so things get really confusing on St. Patrick's Day because you're wearing all these green little.
Yeah, there you go. And being a fellow Irishman, I love St. Patrick's Day. Flexera has a float in the Chicago St. Patrick's Day parade.
All right. And it could be green for multiple reasons.
Yes. And as part of that, we get some tickets to go on the boats that turn the river green.
Oh, nice.
The Chicago River becomes green, though. Yeah.
Yes. Front row seat to a
front row
how long
seat.
Have they been doing that tradition? That's been going on for a long time, right?
It has. It came from the plumbers, and the reason why is, when you look at those skyscrapers, they have to figure out the plumbing, and the way they did it was they mix up this lime green liquid that was totally biodegradable, but they would send it down a drain. And then when it came out of the building, they could figure out which drain it came out of. So then they can send whatever they need back up through the system.
But it wasn't going into the river, or was it?
It was, but it was biodegradable. Gotcha. It wasn't, I'm sure earlier versions weren't as biodegradable as they are today. But what they'll do is they put that green line all the way down so you can follow the plumbing as you're working your way down that tall building.
Kind of like when they give you one of those radiology tests where it's like the liquid.
I had one a couple of days ago, and they made me sign all kinds of papers that I wasn't allergic to anything. And
you're just like the Chicago River over there.
Chicago River,
right?
Gotta
Today, I'm like a lot of things that would be in the Chicago River. I think So,
oh boy,
yeah, we won't go there. Another episode of the Don Sullivan Show. We shall, though.
Mike is going to yell at us, Don. We have not mentioned our sponsor today yet. So why don't I do that?
Of course, Mike listens religiously to every single episode. We know that.
Well, I want to stay in his good graces.
That was Steven's mistake, Mike, when you listen to this episode here. So you go ahead and, Steve, talk about License Fortress. Speaking of sustainability, there is nothing from a perspective of saving licenses that is more well put together and more well thought out. I must admit that I had something to do with that to begin with. Then License Fortress. Go talk about it there, Stephen. This is like a commercial in the middle of the Don Sullivan Show.
Thank you, Don, and greetings from the Garden State, everyone. Today's episode is brought to you by License Fortress, the industry's first and only software asset management firm to offer both a financial and legal guarantee at its highest level of service. Whether it's Oracle, Microsoft, or VMware, License Fortress helps organizations stay compliant, avoid audits, and save money. Learn more at licensefortress.com, and please support our producer by visiting axtinc.com. That's axtink.com. Subscribe to his YouTube channel and help support his efforts to create humorous animation and fight that giant shark that has declared war on beach tourism in his town. Back to you, Don.
Well, that's really our official first actual mid-show commercial there, Stephen. You realize that. So we have actually jumped the shark ourselves. Yeah. And we're going to do a lot more of that as time goes along, I hope. So let me get a little bit challenging with you, Mark, here. And really where we're going to go this is I'm going to ask you if it's really possible that sustainability can be profitable. And I have certain examples, and I'll just keep them in the hardware IT world. For a very long time, we at VMware, specifically when myself and a partner ran the program called Virtualize Africa, we had a desire to send older servers that had gone through their depreciation cycle and then were also out of warranty. We had a desire to send them to Africa so they could just use them because, these are originally $25,000 boxes, pizza boxes and so on. And now they needed to be retired, but we just never were allowed to. And they got scrapped. And of course, when it gets scrapped, you don't know what kind of, if any, recycling they possibly go through. The same is true, but much, much worse with the massive batteries that go into electric vehicles and everything else. One of the things, it's funny, because I've been saying for a long time that what's going to make Musk a trillionaire is actual new battery technology. Little did I know SpaceX was going to be worth $1 trillion once he IPOs that. So I missed on that one. But still, the battery technologies that are going to be out there, this is a material science question, are I'm going to change everything, but they're not right now. And the same thing is absolutely true with solar panels. It's worse with windmills because you just can't move those 110-meter blades anywhere, so you bury them in the soil. All of these different things, I've digressed a little bit from just the servers, but you get the point.
Sure.
It seems wonderful. And the cynic in me says there's a marketing aspect to this that is fantastical. Tell me how I'm wrong, because I want to hear that.
Sure. So there's a couple things. You're right in that the e-waste of our using devices, the way we look at it is each user, chances are right in front of you, you probably have about 8 devices in front of you. And that means you have a laptop, you have an iPad, you have a keyboard, you have your cell phone, microphone, camera. Before you know it, you got 9 devices sitting in front of you.
It's about right. Yeah, I'm counting right now.
Yeah. And then underneath your desk or in the closet.
But I have a mechanical watch on. Thank you, Jason Hahn. It's a mechanical watch that is powered by my wrist. So that's not one of them.
There you go.
Go ahead.
But and all this accumulates. And then, you hope that your local community, like mine here in Schaumburg, Illinois, we do have where you get to bring it to the stadium. We have a baseball stadium, and they have where you drive your car in, and then they got it all stretched out. And, your oils go here, your paper goes here, your TV monitors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a couple ways to look at it. You talked about sending it to Africa so that they can have this 20K server, which for your purposes aren't meeting your needs, but for their purposes, it's probably awesome. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine having an old Sun Solaris box? Those were the to me.
Hey, I want them at home still. All right. So
cream of the crop.
They're the muscle car. They are the muscle car.
That's a great analogy. I'm going to steal that, Steve. That is great.
As you should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause when you throttle that thing, when utilization goes through the roof, fumes come out of the back, carbon comes everywhere. But you knew that when you were building the internet, when you stood that thing up and you had your Solaris Unix on there and you were able to detrace and do all the crazy stuff you could do, that thing was dependable. And you had to literally shoot it for that thing to die. That server, ship that over, it's still great. It still will meet the needs for what they need. So I think there's value there. The flip side that I read some articles about equipment that was sent to Africa was that they figured out how to take the gold, silver, the different metals off of those motherboards. They learned how to take that and put those in different buckets to be able to A, sell, or B, use. And it all came from the hardware stuff that we shipped over there thinking, this excludes us from having to recycle it or pay any fees and fines. We donated it. They use it. It's all happy. And then they figured out quickly, what else could we do with this? And I thought that was fascinating.
Valuable metals in there. Absolutely. There's always money in sanitation, Don.
I know we're from New Jersey. We know this. All I know is the town I grew up in the 70s could have been an episode out of The Sopranos. The richest people in town were the garbage men, or the people running the garbage company, So,
keeping it nice and clean for you.
But I don't think they were sifting through for gold. I think they were,
No, they were wearing gold chains and probably pinky rings as well.
That they were,
yes.
And so on. So.
Yes. So when we talk about the money aspect, what we talk about is, when you look at it, it kind of comes back to the cloud a little bit, comes back to the cloud bill a little bit. And imagine your company, you're spending millions of dollars a year. And you're using tools that basically sort high to low. What's my spend, high to low? Can I group it by business application? Can I group it by, a number of ways, business units, what have you? What happens is there's this threshold that's set that says, if it's 25, 30K or below, probably not worth my time. I'm really focused on the big picture.
And this is what it comes to, the economies of scale. What really makes sense? Yes, everything is economic. I have one of my phrases is all wars are economic, no matter what. Even something like the Crimean War, it really was economic.
Yes.
And all efforts are economic. And if you can't make it make economic sense, then it just doesn't work.
Yes.
So
here's the secret. The secret sauce becomes by putting the green lens on and looking at the carbon, water, and electricity, recognizing that companies have to pay an offset. They have to pay an offset for the carbon that they're producing, especially the larger companies that fit certain criteria where there's government regulations like the CSRD, the great state of California, the great state of Illinois, the great state of New York, all implementing regulations that says you need to tell us what the carbon is, and then there's some sort of carbon tax that's involved. And by us going through and finding, we've been able to show customers, these 10 virtual machines that you have sitting down here that are running 24/7 by 365, they're getting data updates. They missed your financial threshold, but your carbon threshold is through the roof. Have you considered reducing these, putting them on more, the architecture? Maybe the architecture is not right. Maybe the data center location isn't right. Maybe the infrastructure that they put it on. Amazon's not going to retire something that's making them money. If they had a 286 sitting in the box and you fired it up and started using it, they're not going to retire that. They're going to keep going with whatever they're making money with. And until you know that this chipset, an AMD chipset versus an Intel chipset, in terms of whether they've designed it in such a way that it can reduce the carbon, reduce the water, reduce the electricity, you're just going with the first server that gets spun up your way. And so what we're able to do is we're able to look at all that and say, hey, have you considered the following? And even with inside of Flexera, we have our own software that tells us. And because we put the green lens on, we were able to find these VMs. And one was called the Magic Demo. We're like, where'd that come from? And it turns out this Magic Demo was a virtual machine sitting in one of our infrastructure data centers, and it was getting normal updates. It had its utilization, but no one was using it. We could see no one was logging into it, but it was still pulling all its data from 10 different spots, ready to go for the moment you wanted the Magic Demo. It's things like that we're finding and helping customers address.
It was a ghost system that was just sort of running in a virtual, to use the word virtual too much, but an infinite loop that had no real intrinsic meaning. And Flexera and your process was able to identify the superfluousness of that. Sort of like Doge in certain ways for the...
Yes. In a way, but until you put that lens on, it's kind of like going to the eye doctor. Once you're flipping through the different lenses and, now I see some clarity. I saw some clarity in these key areas that I wasn't looking at before. And
you can't improve what you can't measure. No, it makes a lot of sense.
Let me drill down a little bit further on this, because I think there are answers that can be satisfactory to everybody. In that, many people will just hear your first answer and say, okay, that makes sense. And Flexera is doing well with it. That's certainly providing a needed service that's really valuable. But a lot of the impetus for this is that the government is charging, or the government has decided, some of the lower courts, not the Supreme Court, have decided that carbon is a pollutant for some reason, and that that's sort of silly. Now, not the water part of it and the use of water, and there's all kinds of things, but the carbon part of it. And then it's going to say, well, if that didn't exist, that nonsense just didn't exist, that actually paying a fee for carbon, then does that point still apply? Because I think it does. And
yes.
I think you can tell me how.
Yes. So I have this
absent the carbon part of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I look at it from a resource perspective. So there was a story in the Chicago Tribune, and it was about a farm in the middle of Illinois, and it was a farm that was in the family for 60 years. And the matriarch, the mother and father who managed it, both died, and the kids did not want to manage the farm. They said, let's sell it. And the very first group that came by and said, I'll buy that land, was a data center developer. And they thought, okay, the town. So now you have, imagine in the overalls, very Midwestern group, they're all excited because this new data center is going to be put into their town, and that they're going to be the most technologically advanced group in the world because of this data center. And as I go through the story, there's a picture of them. Imagine a VFW hall where you got the U-shaped tables and they're all sitting around. You got the brown, wall up, and they're looking at satellite images of what this land is going to look like when there's rows and rows of warehouses that essentially is going to be housing this data center, and these rows and rows of servers. And they're all kind of nodding, going, okay, I could see that. And then in the next picture, you see the guy look into his face saying, I need a gigawatt of power. And the guy's like, what the hell is a gigawatt of power?
It's a nuclear power plant is what it is.
It's a lot.
It's the equivalent. And then he says, and we're going to make this an AI data center. So we're going to need 6 million gallons of water per day. And now we've got, wait a second. So now the politician's excited because he sees jobs, but he only sees construction jobs. So let's say it takes them 2 years to build this data center. So the town's going to be hopping. The restaurants are going to be hopping. The hotel's going to be hopping. People are going to be coming in and out of this town to help build this data center. But in year 3, when you double click, there might be 30 people who will roll up to that data center on a daily basis. Now, think about this huge lot of land, the equivalent of Millennium Park in downtown Chicago, filled with data centers. The water they have to do a $1 billion project, which was already in the works, to bring Lake Michigan water down to this area where it's like in the Joliet area. So now you got to bring all this water down. And then you have to tell the state of Illinois, the nuclear power plant that you have isn't enough. So you now turn on some power plants that you shut off years ago in order to generate enough power to help feed this data center.
Or what we know now is they're going to build a gigawatt nuclear power plant inside the data centers themselves, right? That's going to be part of
another option.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what Trump and all of the AI folks minus Musk agreed to last week, that they're going to put these, and they're not going to be these little mini nuclear plants that Gates wants to build. They're going to be
significant
gigawatt plants.
So a full plant attached to a data center, basically. It's like the Exadata of your own AI data center, I guess.
So
basically,
for the audience, Exadata is an Oracle thing, the database machine, and I think it's worth mentioning to the audience that general nuclear power plant, as we've been quipping here, is about a gigawatt. The Hoover Dam can generate at its max about 2 gigawatts. There are bigger nuclear power plants, such as existed at Indian Point in New York at about 2. That's it for the United States. Zaporizhzhia, which the Russians and the Ukrainians have been trying to end the world about over the last 4 years, actually generates about 7 gigawatts. And there are a number of others around the world. In fact, Chernobyl had 4 gigawatts, and so did Fukushima. It had a 4 gigawatt maximum as well. So we have relatively small ones here, and they're much, much more efficient in a way and much safer. We've always built them much, much safer in the United States, even than Japan. Sorry, Fukushima people.
Yep.
But we did. We didn't put the backup generator at sea level, for example. And
it's just a dicey area with all the earthquakes.
Well, if the backup generator was on the roof, it would have been okay. But each one of these, and I digress a little bit there, Mark, but I think we're going to be seeing Stargate, which is like the size of Texas Stadium. I think we're going to be seeing 100 of those from Alberta down to the Mexican border inside of 10 years. So each one of them is going to have their own power plant, and gets back to, and I'm going to let you take this away, each one of them is going to need that amount of water. And
yes,
well, particularly, so this problem in Texas that you might have heard us talk to Mohan about, is that there are very little regulations in Texas regarding what you can do with water in terms of heat added. And the joke there is that they're boiling the fish because and so it's a real huge problem. And that's something that literally everybody can get behind, because there is material quantifiable damage that is very hard, and it could be permanent damage. So this is where I really get excited about the sustainability and the profitability, how to fix this, or how to circumvent these problems, so that in very innovative ways, so as to, again, we get back to the different types of new liquids, cooling liquids that Mohan was talking about in regards to the heat capacity and being able to keep that heat, absorb that heat, and then reuse it at the same time. That is something that honestly really just floated my non-boiling river boat.
Sure. So there's a couple things. You gave me a lot to unpack there, as you always do.
Yeah, but I do that sometimes.
So when I talk about, I have this presentation. I called it up because this one slide really helps define the story as you're describing it. When we talk about megawatts, I like to say that's the equivalent of a big box retailer. You go into a big box Walmart. That's a megawatt. And then a gigawatt is if you went into 1,000 Walmarts. So think about the biggest Walmart you've been in, and you hear that they want a gigawatt for a data center.
It's a medium-sized city, at least, right?
Exactly. It'll light up San Francisco. Yeah. That's the key part was. And then the data center that they were putting in Illinois, the town is called Manuka, and they want 700 megawatts. So that's about 70%. That lights up the skyline of San Francisco at night. That's how much power.
Or to be more colloquially there, all of Peoria.
Yes, Peoria. Yes. Home of both Caterpillar and John Deere.
Yep.
Both and it's amazing. The two, they compete. They're like, we're both from here. Now, you talked about the liquids. It was interesting. In my early HP days, I had a chance to work for, do some consulting on behalf of HP for this company called Lubrizol. And Lubrizol is part of Berkshire Hathaway's portfolio, and they make oils and synthetic oils. So they actually have a train track that comes behind their facility. And what they're the masters of is making oils that can work at different temperatures, from race cars all the way down to your average cars. They also make the different oils for like your hand lotions, face lotions, anything that's got oil. They had the ingredient, and their secret sauce was, if we ever created it, we know the whole molecule set up. I'm not a chemist, but from a chemist perspective, we've already tested it. And then if you tell us what you want and what you're trying to accomplish, chances are they've already created it. It's in a database, or they can pull 3 samples out, recreate it, and create what you need. And knowing that, when I listened to Mohan's presentation with you, I immediately thought of Lubrizol. They probably have something in the works that's going to help address this big challenge when it comes to water, because the problem with the water is our water tables are drying up. Yeah. And cities are actually sinking because there's nothing there anymore to hold it up.
The sinkholes are everywhere because
and California has droughts to begin with. You start putting AI data centers all over the place that need 60 million gallons of water a day. And I mean, you got a real issue.
Steve, that's one of the things we're going to talk about in part 2 here is
desalination
desalinization.
and what they're trying to do
And
there.
we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But for now, Mark, can we take a break here? Would you mind staying with us for a little bit?
Sure, absolutely.
So, folks, we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in a few minutes, a week for you all, because you'll be listening to these different parts of this episode over a week. But we're going to take a break just for a minute for all kinds of reasons, and we'll be right back to continue this fascinating discussion on how we can all get rich off of sustainability.
All right, folks, that concludes part 1 of today's episode, Green IT and the Bottom Line. Stay tuned for part 2 next week. We're going to dive into desalinization and other key developments under this topic. And in the meantime, as Don always says, all at-bats are situational. Thanks, folks.